Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Personal Branding Secrets podcast with me, Ash Borland, personal branding coach, helping you build an impactful and profitable personal brand business. Today, we've got an amazing guest for you. It's actually a good friend of mine, Afro Ndiritu. He is a legend when it comes to the whole business coaching and scaling a business. I'm actually really interested to have him on the show today because he's actually took a step away from content and is seeing a really great result. And because of that, I think it's really interesting for us to dive into it, talk about why he did that, what he's seeing, and how he's helping his clients in a way that I normally wouldn't advise, which is quite cool to find out. So let's run the intro and get him on. Hello, mate. How are you? Can you hear me now?
I'm good. Just making sure my sound was all right.
We're having some techie issues, weren't we, before? Afro, mate, welcome to the show. How are you, buddy?
It's so funny. Like I said to Ash at the start, I'm good. I say to you earlier at the start, like I've still got the equipment, like I've got the mic and everything, and it's been a while since I got it all out. I was like a bit rusty, so I'll just use my phone. I guess I've not used it about 5 years.
Mate, yeah, this makes me, it's crazy because literally with you, remember when we were looking at doing a world record?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
I can't believe me and you were looking at, because you literally made so much content that me and you were literally looking into the idea of breaking a world record for streaming for the longest amount of time.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Right.
But it was a long time though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Madness, it was absolute madness. So Afro, mate, welcome to the show. I think there's a bit of a delay, but we'll just kind of bounce around with that.
Yeah,
welcome to the show, mate. Give us a bit of an intro. Obviously, people who don't know who you are, give us a bit of an intro as to who you are, what you do. Obviously, I introduced you a little bit there about it. Talk us a bit about what you do now, and also a little bit about how you transitioned from what you were doing beforehand in regards to content and approach. That'd be cool to know.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, so I help online coaches hit 10K a month in 90 days or less. And that sounds really huge and a big statement, but I think that's important to have a big promise because, and then deliver the promise, obviously. But it was around about Christmas time. I decided I hired a coach to help me just to get clarity on what the hell I'm doing. Because like Ash said earlier on, I was in the same spiral of creating loads of content, chopping it all up, putting it out everywhere. A bit like what Gary Vee tells you to do, essentially. I'll be on every platform, do this, do that. And it came to a point where I was like, this is just becoming a lot to do. And I just got rid of all of the noise. And I focused on, I think we just alluded to earlier on, the 5 1s. It's not mine. I didn't create it. It's a guy who owns lead pages, not lead funnels, lead pages. And he calls it the 5 1s. And it's quickest route to growing and scaling your business up to £1 million. Now he says the 5 1s, number one, is all about having one client avatar, so one person you're serving. The second one is all about providing one solution to that problem. The third one is then your conversion method, how you convert them from a prospect to a client. Fourth one is traffic, and then the other one is do it for 1 year, and that becomes the 5 1s.
And what made you? Because it's really interesting, because you were, how we kind of got acquainted and met each other was purely through the fact that we were the only two doing, in our kind of network, who were doing daily live shows. You were the forefront of content. You were really doing a lot of content. What made you decide to do that shift? What made you decide to leave and just do content and just do this kind of 5 1 approach?
I think at the time, because I was producing, the whole of lockdown obviously allowed me to then go, right, let me go change up what we're doing, because I co-owned a nutrition business that my wife just operates now, and did client acquisition for the whole process. But she kept saying to me, and this is the intuition of a woman, I guess, versus a man. We could talk about it separately, but she was like, "After you got to help these people, as in coaches and consultants, because I know ads, I know client acquisition. I've done it since 2016." And part of me was like, "Nah, they're all right, they're fine, don't need any help." And then as she said it more and more, the world started turning. It's like they are people actually don't get a lot of the things I know. And so last year was almost like sitting in the back cave learning, is what I call it. So I just did a bunch of learning, courses, YouTube, podcasts, all kinds of things. And then formulating a program, a process. Had a couple of beta testing programs that didn't quite work. Then I kind of like nailed it in January, and it just kind of took off from there. But throughout that process, as I said, there was a lot of trial and error, and people forget that bit. They think, you know, you just start and then boom, it just explodes, but it doesn't. And if you listen to my previous episode, probably 8 months ago now, probably that aired, probably more than that. Yeah, it would be a totally different ballgame. I'll do something totally different to what I'm doing now. But the principles of what I've learned are still the same. So I never think of throwing anything away. I just think of, right, how could I use it in a different way?
I like that. It's really interesting because you and there is a slight delay, so I'm making sure that I don't talk until you, and so which is fine. It's really good. I don't know why there's delay, but it's interesting because I think you were somebody who was very much in the trenches, making content all the time. I like that you were talking about learning. I like that you said, you know, you trial and error. It didn't work. This didn't. I think me and you, we became friends, I think, through that because I was watching you do it. And one thing that's been amazing to see is it's been very obvious as of January. You can see that I've still follow you. We still follow each other. I still see what's going on, to see that you had something, and it kind of inspires people, is that you had an idea and your concept was always there. You were just trying to find the way to get it to the world. And you can see that now. You can see it worked, and I've seen it with the social proof. I know me and you have chatted off air, and you're saying, you know, how it's growing and expanding, and it's a really cool thing to see. And I think it's really important for people to know that when you feel like you're figuring it out, it's not the end product. And even now, you're still not the end product. You're still figuring it out. So with that, what was that like? Stepping away, you know, obviously with this personal branding secrets, this podcast is all about building a personal brand, building content, doing all this stuff. What was that like if you'd spent a year doing that? How was that kind of what they call it, the endowment effect of, like, when you worked with this coach who helped you and so turned around and said, stop, don't do that, go after this one thing. How easy was that to just turn off the camera, turn off everything and go out? How did you find
that? Two things really. One, it was like a bit of a sigh of relief, like, I don't have to do all this stuff then. And the other one was like, oh, I really like my podcast. So there's bits I was like holding on to, like, because I really like doing a daily podcast. And part of the challenge that Russell Brunson talks about is doing a podcast every day for a year. I was about 250 in. I was like, do I carry on? I was like, I literally was, I even contemplated trying to rename it, and it's renamed at the moment to something different, to then relaunch it again. I launched it with like 2 episodes, and I just was like, nah, this is just leave it. There's no point. This is making me money. Why am I focusing on this? Now, this is not to say that I'm not going to ever go back to those things, but the focus needs to be on purely acquisition and getting clients in and serving them at a high standard. And then after a period of time, get a team around all that stuff. So essentially, I just turn up and record and leave is where I want to be at. But for now, I'm very happy with what I'm doing. It's growing, and I want to keep it that way.
So without giving away too much of your secrets, obviously, but how do you then, instead of doing content, obviously don't do too much, but if someone's interested in learning how to do that with you, because it's quite an interesting way, how do you do that? How do you acquire clients and get them into the funnel, for example, where without that kind of awareness from content?
Yeah, so it's more direct. So a couple of ways, there's many strategies I teach my private clients, and I'm happy to share a few with you now. So it's just things. First one is like optimizing your personal profile, and this is all Facebook, by the way. So I've just gone with just a Facebook strategy.
Cool.
Okay, because it's all about Facebook groups and having your own group and position yourself as an expert and authority. Because the problem that most people have is that you're trying to compete with the world. So for example, if you're on Clubhouse, like everyone jumped on that, and people still jump on it now probably. Podcasting, YouTube, there's so many different ways, but the market is so crowded. Like with like 2 billion people over on Instagram, 2 billion, 2.7 on, you know, all these platforms, all these billions of people, all these YouTubers, etc. Now, when you have your own Facebook group, it's just you. There's nobody else to compete with. So that keeps it very, very easy in terms of that point of view. Now, a couple of things how to grow that is organically, which is optimizing your profile. So what does your banner say? Similar to like LinkedIn strategy, the teacher in it. What does your banner say? What does your bio say? What are you giving away? Because what most people do is like, all right, I'm going to create a Facebook group, and I'm just going to invite a bunch of people. And the problem with inviting people is that everybody gets invited to groups. Everyone gets invited to asking to like a page. I went back and I think I had 534 people ask me to like their page. I was like, oh my God. And I can't even clear it. It's just, I don't have to get rid of it. It's just there. And this is absolutely ridiculous. So you want to make sure you're optimizing your portfolio the best you can. You're giving something of value away to your audience, that your dream client, because you've identified your one avatar, one person. Just speak to that one person and get them drawn into your world versus you trying to just like invite them.
I like that. That's really interesting, because I find Facebook groups, I built a Facebook group, and actually it's really hard because I myself have built a group myself once before, and it worked and it did really, really well, but it was a lot of effort. But I've actually built three massive groups for clients, like monstrous groups, multiple tens and 20s of thousands, which is really interesting which is really cool. But it's funny enough, it's what you say, but it's really hard to grow a group when you don't have the target audience right. Like, I think that's one thing of mine never worked, is because I did a group right at the beginning of my journey, and it didn't work because I got it to about 600 members. But it was like a full, like you say about one thing, it was a full-time job. And I wasn't able to be able to then go and make all the other content I enjoyed making, because the group, I find, and this is going to ask you this question, because if it's group is the case, this is quite interesting, because you're the first person I've had on here who's doing that, like really doing it. I found the struggle with groups to be, at what point do you stop giving them stuff because you're giving them too much, like it can end up becoming like group coaching for free. How have you worked with that balance? If you're going, because if that makes more sense now as to what you're doing, is that you are still on social, but you're doing a very, very laser focused strategy, which is really cool. How are you balancing that act of like giving them the right amount of stuff in the group without divulging all your secrets?
It's quite simple, really. So there's kind of three main things you do per week in the group. So one of them is you go live once a week for about 20 minutes to half an hour. Another one is a thing called a two-step, where you post something out and say, who's interested in this thing? I'm creating it. And they say, yeah, me. They put the word challenge or offer in the comment section, and you ask them to do. And the third one is then just doing a replay of your live into the group, saying who wants the replay. So I call these things trigger points. So these are trigger points where people re-engage in your group. So for example, a group member might join on a Monday. They might not do anything to your live, or they might sit there for 4 months. But it is something that triggers them, because the content you're doing is always changing around that topic for me, for growing and scaling coaching business. But something will trigger them, and you'd be surprised, like what triggers them. You got that triggered them, but something will trigger them to comment below or to ask for a replay. When they do, then you send it via DM, and you start to get in a DM conversation. So all the stuff you don't really see the stuff on the back end. You see a lot on the front end, but you don't see what happens in the back end. All the sales are made at the back, not the front, when it comes to that kind of strategy. So it's being very, very focused and very consistent on what you're delivering every single week. You'll never, ever, 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 and you'll vouch for this, Ash, you can never give everything away because there's too much to say. It's just not possible.
That's really interesting. When you're saying replay, so could you just elaborate on that a second, because I'm a bit confused on that. So with the replay, are you re-uploading the live, or you just, what do you mean by that? Do you not leave the live in there?
So you'd be surprised that people don't, or you won't be surprised. Most people don't watch you live, generally speaking, because
I'm not surprised.
And whatnot. Something like, if you go live in a group and maybe 10 people watch, and a bunch of people won't even know it existed. Now, the idea is the next day you do a post saying, hey, last night's replay was amazing. I shared XYZ. Who wants a copy of it? And you'd be surprised if you say replay underneath the comments. Then what you do is you take the link, facebook.com/whatever the video, and you just send it to them directly. And it just directs them straight to the live you did.
Oh, so the post is just a post saying who wants the live.
Yeah.
That's very good. I like that. I like that a lot, actually. That's a really simple strategy. I like that very much. There's a similar thing. I work with a guy who does, like, it's a bit like, I love it when you do one where you do like a throwback Thursday. So we do stuff like that, where you do like a YouTube video on a Monday, a clip of it on a Wednesday, and a clip of it on a Friday,
Yeah.
all pointing back to the YouTube video on the Monday. And then on a Tuesday, we do testimonial. And then on a Thursday, we do the YouTube video from previous month. So, and I was like, and that rolls. That's really cool. It's a very similar thing. I've never put them together. I like that. That's really good. And have you found good, well, you obviously have found good growth with that.
Yeah, so people think you have to have like thousands and thousands of people in your group. Now, I'm just going to share some numbers because I'll post these anyway. You'll see it on my feed if you ever check it out. But in the first, was it 5 weeks, made 18 grand from the group. And then in a 60-day period, made 30 grand from the group. And now this month's target is 30 grand. So I'm on track to do that. Now, this is not me showing off the numbers. My group is only 385 people. So it's not thousands of people, because people think you have to have a massive, large group. And that group came from an old podcasting group with 40 people at the beginning. So I grew it from that 40 to that 385. So it's about, for me, it's about the depth of the relationship more than the sheer numbers. Because what should happen with any group is you should be closing at 2 to 5% of your group members should be buying from you. So if you're way over that or way under that, then there's some discrepancies there. So it's anywhere 2 to 5%.
So with that, then, if someone's got an old group, say, for example, like me, but like there's lots of people who are out there that have that. If you've got a group of, say, 600 members, 600, 500, like a group you've grown, is that worth then for somebody to start a new group or just to reuse that old group? Even though, and this is where I'm just thinking from my like social head and my algorithm head, a lot of those people will most likely be dead followers who have no interest in that product. Would it be better to start a new one or defibrillate kind of the old one?
So when people ask this question, I have two answers. So it depends. But at the base of it all, if you are fundamentally shifting your business, like I'm a health coach, then I'm moving to the wealth space, I'd start a new group because there's no comparison. They're totally different things. Now, if I was in the health space and went from fitness to nutrition, there's still some crossover. So what I like to do is do a little test. My test is to run one of like 3 kind of promo cycles. So it can be you do a masterclass, or you do a challenge, or you do some kind of lead magnet. So you just test in the group. Will this group give me £47 for a masterclass, for example? And if no one bites, then you know the group's dead. So you don't have to wait months and months, because people think, like, I'm all about time collapsing results. People think you have to take weeks and weeks and months to get somewhere. But in a period of 2 weeks, you can find, is this group worth it or not? Just by running one of those 3 things like I mentioned. Because if people buy from you, you're like, okay, this group is still golden. If they don't, then just scrap it, start again.
Yeah, I like that. That's really interesting. So you talked about time lapsing. Me and you were chatting about things off air a little bit, saying about how I actually am getting very much into YouTube and finding that. And you said to me, which is really interesting, you said that people come to you quite often and say, YouTube is the best way to build your brand quick. What's your thoughts on YouTube? I mean, you know why I want to do it, and we've spoken about that as a long play. But you said something quite interesting to me. So I'd just like to let you take the floor with that, of like, when people come to you and say YouTube is a good strategy, what's your take?
It's a good strategy if you want to wait 5 years for results. It's not a good strategy if you're looking for results now. So you can't expect YouTube to, be a magical seed to plant to grow in like a short period of time. So if you're looking to build like a massive audience and you want influence and impact, etc., go create a YouTube channel, but expect nothing from it for the first like 5 years. Now, if you want to grow a business and a coaching practice or consultancy practice in a short period of time, YouTube is one of the worst places to start. It just takes so damn long to build it. It's like, I think you said, 3,000 odd on average videos it takes before people even start making money. So it's like insane.
It's 3,000. So to get to 1 million subscribers, the average YouTuber, TubeBuddy did some stats on this, and the average YouTuber had 3,873 73 videos, which is an insane amount of content. Oh, sorry.
Exactly.
So that's go on.
Nah, it's like no, no, but exactly. That's the point. So don't start a YouTube channel if you really want fast growth at the initial start. Start a YouTube channel once you've got traction or you are somebody who's happy to spend like 5 years waiting for something to happen. And
Yeah.
like you mentioned before, you got to be very specific about it. Your topics, your keyword research, there's so much goes into it. You don't just get up and whack a video on and put it on YouTube. So for me, it's not the fastest way to grow.
I think that's really interesting. So me and my wife were chatting about this. We've been talking about this the last couple of months, really, like on and off.
Yeah.
As someone who, like, I started a podcast and the podcast does well. I actually move more towards YouTube now.
Yeah.
For the reasons you've just stated, as in the business is fine. I'm fine for money. I'm fine for leads. And it's now more about building a legacy, about platforming, and to be that super tier expert in your field. YouTube is really the only way for long term, like long. And I've said to you, I've met people who are 12 years in who are like absolutely killing it. But it's interesting because I find that many people don't understand. And actually, as you said, it's about knowing what you want. And if your goal is to build a profitable business and you need that quick, and that's why I quite like, that's why I wanted you on, to be honest, is that it's this kind of bit that no one likes to talk about. But the reality is you've got to wait. I said to someone recently, they were like, how long should I know? It's literally today. So they said, how long should I know before it works? And we were talking about podcasting, and I said, give me 6 months. I was like, 6 months before we even have an idea. I said, you don't have you don't, this is a different type of strategy. When you're building a brand and building a profitable business are two very different things. One can be like lit with, you can accelerate one and you really can't accelerate another. You can't accelerate a personal brand. It's impossible. Which I've learned no matter how many times I could try. There's no way.
You can't, like, unless you become viral, which is like 1.1% of people go viral. But people think it's everybody, but it's not. It's only because you see them because they went viral.
Absolutely. Like, I love that. That's the only way you've seen them, and it's very true. Like, I think that's the issue with a lot of stuff when it comes to, you started building your personal brand. You've taken a step back to build your business. I have no doubt, knowing a little bit about you, that I'm sure once this is now really fully flying, you'll be back in the driver's seat to build your authority as you, because you know how to do it. And it makes sense. And you already kind of had it there. And you'll have an audience as well. That's the difference. That's the thing that people don't realize with a lot of this stuff is, I've learned this now, is I won't, even myself, like when I take on clients, I don't take on new businesses anymore at all. Like, I don't do, like, if someone comes to me and they're like, I'm a new business, I won't take them on. And it's nothing against them, but it's the reality is, the cost for me to work with them could probably be spent better with someone like you. And then I'll take them a year later when they've got more cash, and I can then blow their appearance up. But the reality is, all the best results come from people who have enough money to pay for a year to be able to get those results. New businesses don't have enough brand equity. They've got nothing, do they?
They don't have any resources, basically. Limited resources. Less likely to have money, time, and anything else that goes with that. So you're right. So you are personally better off getting somebody who's got some money, who's got an offer, who's got some kind of business established for a period of time. Then you basically put light fluid on it, essentially.
Exactly. And that's what's really, it is. And that's what's really interesting with what you do, because I think I actually, if you put me and you together, I would say that most people would say that I would disagree with what you do. They'd be like, "You're wrong." But I actually completely 100% agree. And something me and you haven't spoken for. Me and you haven't spoken for like 6 months, because just because I have my son, and you've gone off and done this, which is cool. And I was like, we need to get in and chat. But the reality is, as you say, is one of the discovery things I've discovered is for me is like, one of the questions on my kind of like discovery form when people come in is, are you a profitable business? Like, are you actually running, or are you a hobbyist? And the reason why, or like an entrepreneur, I hate that word so much. But like that, because the reality is I've worked with clients, and when they've not got the basic bones of a business that is profitable and still selling, it's very hard because what they're looking for is like what you're doing, those five ones and all that. It's that instead of actually saying it's different. And I think people need to get that in their head. Like, and it's interesting. And that's what we talk about right at the beginning, knowing your client and knowing who you're talking to.
Yeah. It's the bones of like, and we've said it so many times, like before conversations. It's the thing that people don't want to do is they don't want to attract one person because I feel like they're going to then attract nobody. But it's the biggest mistake people make. And even like to an extent of like having one solution. It's like, oh my God, I've got this package and this package and this package. I've got that many hours of this and this per hour that. No, just have one solid offer and you're right. It's all you really need.
So with your one solid offer, because I'm really interested, because I've only ever had one offer. I don't only do one thing. And I have like a 1 hour strategy session as well, which is just more of a consulting thing. With that one offer, do you do online courses? Do you do what is your one offer? Obviously, like this is your pitch moment, not intentional, but it's interestingly, if that's one product, and I'm a big believer of that. I'm actually a big believer of that, even though because I've always done that, because I think I just can't remember things otherwise. What is that one offer in you? What does that look like?
Cool. So the whole premise is to build out your client acquisition process. So it's a 5-step process. And the first step is like building out your offer, which encompasses knowing your dream client. Okay. What are they about? And some fundamental things within that, I'd be here for an hour and a half discussing. Because I have 1 hour, one-on-one, just to talk about that one piece. I call it a bulletproof call to finalize what is your offer. Okay. Once you've got that solidified, and it's a high ticket offer that sells at least 2K, then we move on to the next step, which is all about growing your group. Now, once you've got your offer in place, though, bearing that in mind, you can go and start pitching it straight away. So you don't have to wait weeks and weeks and weeks. And I've recently formulated a strategy where you can actually find out in a week, is this offer worth anything? Now, for people who are listening and knowing that what we and you know, Ash, to be able to do it in a week, bloody hell, that's going to save you a lot of time and effort, because people spend weeks and months and years trying to build something that nobody wants. I've been there, you've been there. So now I've created something that I'm recording this weekend as an extra module for my private clients, is that how can you get this thing you've just made, and not physically made, just like off on pen and paper, essentially. How do you put it in the marketplace and attract the right people to you to know if it's got any traction? Because you need to test it with your marketplace. Me and you talking about it, great. Me and my clients talk about it, great. Go test it, put it out there. So some step-by-step strategies. Once you've formulated that first kind of initial piece in the offer, that allows you to know within a week, is there traction with this offer? If there is, then you kind of move on to growing your group then. Because you don't need a group yet. You need to know if your bloody offer's worth anything. Then you build the group. All right? And that's kind of step 2. You build your group, and that's some fundamental things that I shared with you earlier on, doing a live once a week, 2-step once a week. There's a lot more to it, but again, I'll be forever. But essentially, got a group, and that builds a warm pool of your dream client. Okay, and you can get loads of different ways to trigger the conversation, because the more conversations you have, the more money you make. Okay, so once you get that warm pool of people there, the next step then is having a thing I call conversations that convert. Having the right messages with the right guys, and I give templates for this, because talking face to face is totally different to when you're messaging people. Some people won't message you for a week. What do you do? Some people are really keen and want to move forward, like get on a call straight away. What do you do? So I guide them through that process. And once you've done kind of step 3, then it's a call. And most people do calls for high ticket because you have to, really. No one's going to spend $2,000 on a checkout because you sent them a link. So unless you've got massive authority and you've got 1 million followers, which takes 12 years, like we said. So you ain't happening overnight.
That's actually really, I would like to just dive onto just a little bit there, is that high ticket thing. I'm glad you said that, because that's something that you see a lot of people talk about. I watched the Brendan Bashar video, which is very, very good. And he actually said this. He said, like, your mid-tier is the maximum you can sell without any connection. And he said, in that product, he actually said, he said, your mid-tier shouldn't go over $500. And he said, because no one is going to spend more than $500 without some form of something else. And I'm glad you said that, because I agree with you with that. Because I wouldn't pay $2,000 for something without actually speaking to you. But we see, I think we see a lot of people 100%. We see like people like Grant Cardone and people like that. But that's what I like you just mentioned, is they have the name.
Yeah. Once you've got that name established, you can start playing around with other things. But it's like the whole value ladder thing. Like it's upside down, really. Like, don't start low. Now, there's some, and I'm not saying go high ticket for everybody, because you have to have certain things in place before you can warrant that. And I'll talk about that in a second. But what people tend to do is start low. I'm going to do something at £9.99 or £100 or 97, and then I'm going to sell people up to my next thing, which is like 597. Then I'm going to sell the two, and you do this whole little thing, and it's like, forget all that crap. Start high and go down, because you've got margin here to play with. It means you can have advertising budget and spend and everything else. And what people don't realize is that the pros actually only do low ticket to liquidate the ad spend.
Yeah.
Which means, like, when you start spending like £300, £400 a month on Facebook, a day on Facebook, the cost per lead goes up. So to get it back down, they put something on the front end for like 47, 97, whatever it is. And they just sell a ton of those, because it's like just printing money at that point in time. So start high. But in order to start high, I call it the 3 E's. You need one, you need to have some form of education. So one of these three. So education being formal or informal. Formal meaning you've got some kind of certification or diploma or degree. Or informally, where you learn from like a mentor or some kind of apprenticeship type thing. And coaching and consulting space, that doesn't happen very often, but you can do. And the second E then is all about evidence. So what evidence have you got? Have you got people results before? Have you got people results? You can testimonials, case studies, all that stuff that goes with it. And the third one is all about experience, which is, in the coaching world, you tend to have experienced something yourself. Like, maybe you've lost like £100, maybe you want in weight, now you want to teach other people how to do the same. So you've got some life experience. If you've got one of those 3 E's, you can warrant charging the 2K price point. If you don't, you're fresh out of college, you can't start there.
I like that. And it's really interesting though, because I think the 2K price point is the right point. And I also love that idea of the go straight in at the high, because it's interesting as a coach, as someone in this kind of, not in this space, but in my space as a coach, listening to this is when I listen to value ladders, and as much as I absolutely love them and I get them, I kind of try to think of it a bit differently. I always try to think of it like, really, I think of my value ladder like a funnel. I just think of it that way. But the reality is, there is no way, and this is probably the same, that you can really put something right now. I could put something into my business as a mid-tier or low-tier product without devaluing my high-tier product. There is no way. There is nothing I could do, which is, from a business point of view, I'm very open. I've never really talked about this on the air, but like, from a business point of view, that's really difficult, because the reality is, I could either make my high tier product incredibly like better and better and better, but by bringing in that low tier, which is what all of the kind of gurus would say, the big time gurus would say, as you said, the low tier 49, whatever, which is cool. I think in a normal one-to-one coaching practice with some sort of online element or group coach, whatever it may be, very difficult to actually implement that. I would say. Every time it's been the bane of my life. I'm always writing it down and going, oh, well, wait a minute, then how does that? Well, it doesn't work. Like, and I've always done one. I've always had one, and I always get on a call with people, and they go, "You need to do more than one. You know, you need to do more. You need to have 3. You need to do." And I'm like, okay. Like, I just have with mine. I have 1, and then I have ongoing coaching. That's it. You do your 6 weeks. And then you can, and then after that 6 weeks, if you want to continue, we can do one-to-ones. That's fine, but that's not even a package. That's just a coaching. Overcomplicate, I think some people do.
You could, no, like you said, like you can get to £1 million just by having that one offer, and then you start faffing around the rest. And again, it's like I say this because I've been through it. Like, trying to build a webinar for that mid tier, absolute nightmare. I sat down with a prospect the other day, and we worked out 16 moving parts, 16 moving parts to a webinar. And that doesn't include the actual webinar. I was like, oh my God, there's so many things that can go wrong. This is why, like, if you have a group, you've got so many goals. How many times you watch a webinar? Once.
Never. I don't watch a webinar. I don't watch. I have a masterclass, and people watch that, but like, I would watch one of those, but maybe. I do. Yeah, I do, because I watch a lot on YouTube. I'll watch webinars on YouTube, but I wouldn't sign up to a webinar.
Yeah. So you may or may not, but you're never going to watch it more than once, generally speaking. That's weird if you go back and go, I'm going to watch this again. So generally you get one hit with a webinar, and the conversion rate's just so bad because there's like, here's some stats for you. So if you spend £1,000 on a webinar, bearing in mind you have to have all the moving parts and all the tech sorted, let's assume you've got that done. Spend £1,000 on a webinar, it's about £10 per webinar registrant, which means you have 100 people register. Of those 100 people, 25 are going to show up. So you really lost 75. Okay. Of those 25 people, 9 are going to stay to the end. Of those 9, 3 people are going to book a call. Now, this is when it gets interesting. Of those 3, about 1 person's going to turn up. Do you know why? Yeah. Because they're not that invested. You've only watched someone for about 60 minutes. You might have booked a call for next week, and you'd be like, you know what? Something's come up. I can't bother. I'll just cancel it. So the drop-off rate is massive, which means the close rate is like anywhere between like 20 to like 50%. So you're not going to make any money. And that's even if you are like one of the top people getting everything right. So the only way you make money is you've got to test it on the front end by spending thousands and thousands of pounds to get it to work. And if you've got no money, don't start there. It's a bloody nightmare. Versus
that's interesting
because a group, like I said, 2 to 5% conversion.
Well, that's really quite interesting because that's where I watched a guy, and I can't remember his name, but he comes up on everything. He's the bald guy with glasses and a beard, and he's the influencer. He's the authority marketing guy. He worked with Shay Robots, and he does loads of stuff. You would know him because he comes up on every YouTube video. Yeah. But his video come up on YouTube. He's not got a big YouTube following or anything. He just is always, he's very much ads. Yeah. And he said about ads, and he said paid ads is terrible. And I was like, oh, and I thought, and he said paid ads. He said, unless you have hundreds of thousands of dollars, he was saying, he said, but hundreds of thousands of dollars, he said, don't try and do it. He said, because you're getting yourself, he said, you pay the beginning for data. He said, the people who win, and like you said about ad spend, the same thing. He said, the people who win, he said, they're paying to find out what works and what doesn't. He said, it's only after about a year of doing that do they then go, we've got this amazing ad funnel that's going to just go boom. He said, but you one-man band businesses, he said, if you can't afford to drop 10, 15, 20 grand into just learning, he said, don't even go near it, because he said you're going to, and how many people run £2 a day, £1 a day, £5 a day, and it's not doing anything.
Yeah.
It's not doing anything. And they'll go, oh, but I was said to people do £90 a month. And then I'm like, well, £90 a month is not a lot, but accumulated, actually that can get you on a mastermind course for a year. About 1,200 quid, 1,500 quid could get you into a group mastermind course to coach you how to scale your business. And it's a lot more valuable to you than throwing £90 a month on an ad that you don't know is going to do anything.
Yeah, you need to have those, like I said, you need those steps in place. You need to make sure every single step of your process. So like the way you create your offer, the way you grow, for me, grow your group, whatever it is, how you get people into your world, whatever methodology you use, then you're going to make sure your conversations, if you have conversations, or your call rate is like 30 to 50% close rate. Then once you validate all those key places, then you put ads on. Then it just accelerates it. Put ads on, it will just put more holes in what you do and it just leak out money. And that's the problem. I faced that before. Like 2018, blew £1,000 on, I think I told this story, in the exact room, whiteboard, recorded a course, spent all of Christmas Day recording it, like didn't speak to any of my family. Like, right, I'm going to launch this thing in January. It's going to be absolutely amazing. There's £1,000 on ads, didn't sell anything. That had to get 2 part-time jobs, cleaner and a pizza delivery guy in a weekend. And I had to rebuild again. Yeah.
Oh, the amount of people that build on. I like online courses. I think there's a place for them in my business. I haven't fully worked out where yet, and I'm still trying to do that myself.
Yeah.
I think there's a place for it to support learning. I think that's another thing that I quite like, is that they're very good. Online elements are very good to support your high ticket product. Of like, go away, learn that. Go away, do that. Like, they're amazing resources. 100%. I think that's where they fit. So like, if you want to learn how to do a podcast, I can easily make a webinar on how to do a podcast, and it can be which is part of the program. But I think that thinking they're the thing that's going to make you all the money, I don't think I think I still have yet to be convinced that a one-to-one coaching private element is not the best way for one-man band. Obviously with online elements, but for one-man band new coaches, There's no way. If I'd done an online course only, I would have to have got another job. If I'd done that last year, whereas now my wife doesn't need to work. So it's like a different thing, you know, like what would you do? It doesn't make any sense. My wife can raise our son, I could have just, you know, like I would have sold it, because the online element only hugely devalues it. And people are going to send you those messages and questions anyway. Like that's the thing I've noticed. Every time I've done online courses, and I've run a few, every time I do like a £250 course, I get more questions. And then I have to say to people, can you stop messaging? Not, you know, you've paid for the course if you want this. And they go, I have paid for your product. And I'm like, oh, this is actually not great, because now like they like they could do a bad review. And I don't think it's a good idea personally.
No, you need a team of support to then make that work. Like you said, if you're a one-man band, don't start with that 200, 300, 400 pound mark, because you don't have the time and resources, because they will ask questions. Because as much as you put in the course, generally speaking, it's the coaching element. It's a coaching. That's why I talk about coaching program. It's not a course. It's a program you take people 100%. Through. You don't just give them. Like my wife said it. Farah said it beautifully. She said, "There's a massive difference between a course and a program." I was like, "Yeah, there is actually." And she told me it. We had a conversation about it. A course is a standalone thing and an element. A coaching program has a course in it, but it's got so much support around it in a community that makes it so much better as an experience. So you can spend $2,000 on a course, or you can spend $2,000 plus on a coaching program. Game changer.
Oh, absolutely. And that's I'd say my move definitely is moving towards, mine's a program anyway, but to the online element. But you have to, there's a big difference. And I hate the word course, but I think it devalues what you do if you're coaching somebody. And I also think that I've definitely said that, is that every single coaching, one-to-one coaching should have an online element to it. I do actually believe that. The more I've done it, the more people I've coached, the more I've worked with. If you are just teaching people information, that could be done in a 30-minute video before the actual implementation call. And I think that's what people need to do.
You need that foundational learning, like that baseline for everybody, and then they come back with more informed and better questions. Therefore, they're more likely to move forward on the journey.
I love it. Afro, mate, if people want to connect with you, they want to work with you, they want to know more about you, where can they go? I mean, I've got your website in the description, but like in the description here, but if they want to go and learn any more, where can they go?
The best place to find me is Facebook, because obviously the 5 ones, true to my word, just find me on Facebook. It will be a Freak Ndiritu, not Afro, but if you put Afro Ndiritu, and I'm sure like Ash said, he'll put it in somewhere. AFRI, I'll spell my own name then. AFRI QUE Ndiritu, NDRITU. Google, find it, you'll find me, and then drop me a message.
Amazing, mate. Thank you so much for being on the show, buddy. It's really, really good. I'm really happy that it's all working out and it's all doing really well. And like I say, we'll definitely get you back on as well to talk about this, because it's quite an interesting topic, and has got me thinking about loads of new things, because I think they actually align massively well, and it's got my head spinning, which is really, really cool. So, mate, thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome.
And I'll speak to you soon.
Pleasure, man.